9/11 report, it in itself just reeks of a cover-up, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and I'd like to talk a lot more about that after the break.
Okay, we're coming up on a break. We're here with Lieutenant Colonel Bob Bowman, retired Air Force. We will be back in 3 minutes. You're on The Real News.
Because that thing's and it's playing right now, so I'm not.
We're back on The Real News, and we're joined with Lieutenant Colonel Bob Bowman. Go ahead, Mr. Bowman. We'd asked you a question, come up on a break. Go ahead and take it from there.
Okay, well, you know, you mentioned the 9/11 Commission report, or as we call it, the 9/11 Omission Report. I've spoken personally to the co-chairs of that commission, Congressman Hamilton and Governor King, and they admit that they were lied to and that those lies made their way into the final report, which of course they didn't write. They had no control over. It was written by Philip Zelikow of White House Flack. When you combine the horrible whitewash nature of that final report with the confiscation of videotapes, audio tapes, black boxes, and other evidence by the FBI, it is clear that regardless of who was responsible for 9/11, the subsequent cover-up was itself a conspiracy involving elements of the White House and the intelligence establishment.
It's just extraordinary how deep we get into this situation. Once we really start to analyze it, the only ways for this really to have occurred were almost just, I mean, practically unbelievable, but yet they are in fact true.
Yeah, well, you know, like I say, the most unbelievable and wildest conspiracy theory of all is that 19 Arabs with box cutters and an old man on a dialysis machine in a cave planned and executed this thing all by themselves and managed to stand down our air defenses and managed to pre-wire those buildings with explosives and thermate and whatnot. You know, the whole thing is utterly ridiculous, and their official conspiracy theory violates the laws of physics. Now, I don't know who the conspirators were. I mean, we all agree it was a conspiracy, you know, whether it was those 19 Arabs and Osama bin Laden, who, as you say, isn't even wanted for it because they don't have any evidence against him. Whether it was them, whether it was Israelis, Saudis, Pakistanis, Americans, all of the above, we don't know. The truth about 9/11 is that after 7+ years, we still don't know the truth about 9/11, and we should, and so should the families of victims, and that's why we absolutely have to have a new 9/11 investigation.
As you well know, Mr. Bowman, our money is printed out of thin air. It's backed by nothing. It's debt buried at origin, and the American people are on the hook for it. The unconstitutional Federal Reserve banking system is to blame for this. What is your opinion on this entity, and should it be abolished and the right to coin money returned to Congress as it states in the Constitution?
Absolutely, that's what the Constitution says, and in the last 2 years I've gone around the country on a speaking tour. I'm doing it again this year, but the last 2 years I've been giving addresses as if I were President of the United States, and one of the things that I've said in every one of those speeches is I ask Congress to eliminate the debt-based monetary system and draft legislation abolishing the Federal Reserve.
Well, I agree with you on that. And we are seeing other countries. China has called for a one-world currency. Russia this past week has called for the dollar to be dropped as the world reserve currency. Do you see the dollar's days as numbered? Do you think that the economic meltdown is going to result in a new world currency, or at least the dollar being dropped as the world reserve currency?
Well, there certainly is great danger of that, and I'm hoping that President Obama can straighten the mess out, get our economy moving again, and eventually decrease our deficit and return to fiscal responsibility. But if that doesn't happen fairly soon, I think there's no question but that the rest of the countries of the world will abandon the dollar.
We're here on the Real News Radio. We're talking to Dr. Robert M. Bowman, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Air Force, retired. And Dr. Bowman, we have this report from Missouri, I'm sure you've seen it, going after supporters of presidential candidates Ron Paul, Chuck Baldwin, Bob Barr, as being militants. This report was sent out to law enforcement in the state of Missouri as these supporters are considered militia, influence, even as terrorists. I mean, this is just total tyranny. What is your perspective of this report?
Well, this is fascism taken to its ultimate conclusion, which is tyranny over the people and loss of any semblance of democracy and republican form of government. We now have one-party rule, one party with two wings, artificially divided in order to separate the American people, to divide us left and right, liberal and conservative. These artificial divisions, usually over hot-button social issues that the government really doesn't have any business getting involved in anyway. This is meant to divide us so we don't come together and understand who the real enemy is, which is our fascist corporate government masters. And the only real patriots in this last election, those who stood for following the Constitution, honoring the truth, and serving the people, were brave folks on the left and the right who are independent of the corporate masters. People like Ron Paul, Chuck Baldwin, Bob Barr, and Dennis Kucinich.
Well,
and you know, it's interesting because Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich are viewed as on opposite ends of the political spectrum, yet they agree on so much because they represent the wants and needs of the American people instead of the multinational corporations.
Which is extraordinarily rare in Washington, if not non-existent. You also brought up a great point, the divide and conquer strategy here, the New World Order. I mean, our society is just saturated with divide and conquer type of mechanisms. We have sports teams, I mean, you name it, it's divide and conquer.
Yeah, and one of the major themes of my speaking tour, and I'm doing it again this summer, starting from mid-July to mid-October, and this year just covering the eastern half of the country. One of the major themes is bringing back people together to take back America, and my talks are often co-sponsored by the Green Party and the Libertarian Party. And if that isn't neat, I don't know what is.
Mr. Bowman, we're going to be coming up on a break here in about 60 seconds, but today being the 6th year anniversary of the invasion of Iraq, when we come back after this break, I would like to get your opinion of the war in Iraq. Were we misled into it? Was the war justified? Should the United States, if they can't afford these wars, now that we're, what, 10 trillion and growing past bankrupt, can we afford to have bases all over the world and police the whole world? So we'll be coming up on a break here in about 30 seconds. I'd like to get your perspective on that and a couple other things, and we really do appreciate you joining us here on The Real News.
You bet, and I'm looking forward to answering that question big time.
Okay, we are here on The Real News Radio. We're joined by Lieutenant Colonel Bob Bowman. Again, our website is therealnewsradio.com, and We are on delivery.